Okay, sorry for my voice in this video. I just had a tonsillectomy about a week ago and I'm still recovering. But anyway, I wanted to get this video out to share some of my thoughts with connecting the Mavic 3 with the new goggles Integra and the very new RC Motion 2 controller that I just got. I was actually very surprised by this firmware update that introduced this functionality or this support between the Mavic 3 and the goggles Integra and the motion controller. I was not expecting that. So when I saw that, I went and grabbed my motion controller 1 and tried hooking it up, only to see that it didn't support it. It said that it couldn't take off, but I did get a goggle feed from a Mavic 3, which was already very exciting for me, but unfortunately I couldn't take off. Now, the regular stock controller and the RC Pro are not supported through goggle view either. There are some videos out there showing some of the kind of workarounds for that, how you can do it. Personally, I'm not going to be doing that because I do believe that that will void your DJI Care support if you happen to crash your drone while flying that way, but I'll throw a link up to that video if you want to check that out for yourself. But anyway, I ordered the RC2 Motion Controller 2 through DJI's store using the $90 coupon that I received from back when I purchased the Avata, and DJI exposed all those email addresses for people. If you didn't hear about that, that was pretty nuts. They forgot to BCC and basically just put everyone's email addresses out there, and you could see everyone's email addresses. I believe there was well over 1,000 of them. Basically everyone who purchased an Avata and got that email has everyone's emails. But anyway, I ended up using that coupon, bringing the price of the RC Motion 2 down to about $150, including tax, I believe, something like that. I also had like a $5 coupon. But anyway, I got it, and as soon as I got it, I wanted to hook it up and test it out. So that's what this is, and I'm just going to share some of my initial thoughts. It's my first time using the Mavic 3 with the goggles Integra and the motion controller, and it is also my first time using the motion controller 2, period. It's my first time syncing it up. And you will notice that I didn't bind the device, so you're going to see a little error in the bottom right. So let's go ahead and get started here, and I'm just going to kind of talk through what's happening to let you know a little bit more about what I'm thinking and what it is exactly that I'm doing during this flight. So this is actually right after I just took off and I'm starting up. Now, the last time I flew my Mavic 3, I was in sport mode, and it still remembered that. So right out of the gate, I'm in sport mode with this thing, just kind of looking around, using the motion controller to aim that circle, which would then change the direction of where the drone is facing, or the tilt of the camera, which is pretty cool. Has a nice feel to it. The very first thing I noticed when I hooked it up was the clarity. I'm used to flying my Mavic by looking at an iPhone connected to the original controller for the Mavic, and it's so small, and you're competing with the sun. This just gave you no light leak, full big screen in front of you with the goggles, and with the goggles Integra and the goggles 2, you have a full 1080p OLED display. So it is pretty shocking how good it looks, especially with the improved optics from the Mavic 3's camera. It looks better than any FPV drone that I have ever flown. Even with the O3, it can't compete with that because you are using the best drone sensor around, pretty much. So just stopping, and I was really pretty amazed by just looking around, and here I'm testing the angle thresholds for the Mavic 3's camera, so you can look straight down, which is pretty cool. And notice I'm not seeing any props in this view. You do have a real nice freedom of movement, which is really just a whole different experience when using the Mavic 3. So I kind of thought this would be a gimmick and thought I was wasting my money when I went to buy this thing, but it actually was really cool, and I can see myself using this just for some sightseeing. Really, I'm not going to be using this professionally, I can tell you that right now, but for sightseeing and just having some fun and seeing some things with a new kind of perspective and some enhanced clarity, or letting some of my friends and family, whatever, try this, definitely worth it. Now here I'm trying out the e-brake which they changed it from the RC1 to the RC2, or the remote control, the motion controller. And you'll notice there when I hit the pause or the e-brake button, there was a little bit of time for it to stop. I noticed that between the Avata and the DJI FPV, it does take a little bit longer to stop the Mavic 3. Now I know I am in sport mode here, but there was probably a good, I don't know, 5-10 feet that the drone was still moving forward even after I pushed that pause button. Now here I was looking straight down at the ground and using the reverse function of the motion controller too. And in a moment I'll be using the joystick. You have a full joystick. I noticed, and I was actually surprised by this, the movement is actually very subtle. So yeah, it can get you out of a tight spot, I suppose, but it's really not going to be any kind of movement to help you get places. It's just to kind of fine-tune your adjustments. Now I brought it down lower here and I was looking at this entry point into the woods, and yeah, I was tempted to go in, but since I didn't bind the device, this motion controller 2, to my Mavic 3, you'll notice in the bottom right it says not using bound device. I didn't want to risk it because I believe that if you crash or cause any damage to your craft while not using a bound device, it doesn't qualify for DJI Care support. So I didn't want to find that out the hard way. I could be wrong on that, but that's just my gut. So yeah, just flying around using the brake button again, and pretty soon here I believe I'm going to turn on the head tracking, which is also supported by the Mavic 3. So bringing it up here, and let's see if that's what I'm about to do. And you'll notice here, okay, so I just clicked the function button on the motion controller 2. You can access the Mavic 3's camera settings while flying, which was nice. And you can actually use the controls on your headset as well, so the goggles Integra or the goggles 2, to control these things. You don't have to use, the few buttons that are available on the motion controller 2. You do have some, different things. But anyway, here we go, head tracking, turning it on, and immediately you notice that head tracking has been enabled. Personally, I don't like head tracking, but I did want to try it out just to show it. I think it's a little bit confusing, and yeah, there's a little learning curve, but I just don't really see the point of this. You have to, at the same time, use the motion controller to move that circle to show the drone where it's going to be flying, and then use your head, I guess, to just show where it's looking. But using those two things simultaneously is just not comfortable to me. I don't really see a purpose for getting comfortable with it and spending time with it, but it is kind of cool, I guess, maybe for sightseeing again, and showing people that, it's as easy as it can get. If you're showing someone who's older, grandma, grandpa, and you just want them to go somewhere and look around, turn on head tracking and just look around. That's no buttons for them to hit. There's nothing they can mess up. You just put it on their head and tell them to look around, and you can see it. There you go. Not the only purpose I can see myself using the head tracking for, outside of something like this for demonstration purposes. Okay, so head tracking is still on. Again, you get that full range of movement for the gimbal and the camera on the Mavic 3, so pretty awesome to be able to look pretty much everywhere, including straight down and even up into the clouds without getting any props in view is very impressive. And again, great for sightseeing. I've seen these trees 1,000 times. They're right in my backyard. But taking this on vacation or traveling or something like that would be pretty awesome to take in some new sights and really have that freedom of movement. Yeah, I turned off head tracking because I was over it. And then flying around a little bit more here, I believe I'm going to be landing soon. Overall, I am pleased with this. I don't regret purchasing it. I'm going to be selling my motion controller 1. Seems you can get about $100 for them, but I really don't seem to have any need for that anymore. Just because the new motion controller 2 is much nicer. You have that reverse function when you do the reverse trigger, and you have the joystick for some sideways movement. So you get some extra flexibility with what you can actually do with this thing, which is quite nice, and you get the added benefit of supporting the Mavic class drones as well as the Mini 3 Pro only. So that's the Mini 3 Pro. It doesn't support the Mini 3 or the Mini 2 or anything like that. In all of those, you would have to have the motion controller 2. So trying to land here, that's my little landing board there, and I didn't have the confidence to land, so you can see me kind of popping out there to make sure that all the feet are going to be making good contact, holding in that lock button to try to get this thing to land. Obstacle avoidance sensors going off. It's really wanting to make sure the safety features are there, but eventually it does land and everything was fine. Success. I'm gonna have to bind the device now, and just to make sure that everything is working. One last thing that I want to say about my experience with this and just my impressions. Now, you saw me fly down to that little opening in the woods. It was kind of strange to me when I was using the Mavic 3 with the Integra goggles like this and flying it as if it were an FPV drone. I guess you can call it an FPV drone now because I'm flying an FPV, but it's not truly an FPV drone. It's much larger than that, and it just doesn't fly the same way. But it really kind of was a weird moment for me where if it were an FPV drone like all the other drones that have been flying this way, I would have gone in there no problem. Kind of makes me feel like I could open up some new avenues for flying my Mavic into tighter spaces and having a greater awareness of my surroundings and get some really impressive shots with that camera flying through closer proximity areas. And I can't say I'd have the confidence to fly in there without having goggles. I would not want to fly in there while looking at a little screen on a phone or something. Even with the RC Pro, which is larger and brighter, I just don't really see myself doing that. However, with the goggles view and these DJI goggles Integra, I can easily see myself punching in there and just doing some slow, maybe cinemode flight and getting some really incredible shots that are super stabilized using that Mavic 3's camera to just really capture some amazing footage and probably be just fine because the Mavic 3, it's a much larger drone, but it's not huge. You shouldn't have much trouble navigating that kind of environment if you know what you're doing. And you always have that panic button just in case you need it. Okay, so there you have it. This is the most talking I've done in about a week with my tonsillectomy recovery. But anyway, I wanted to share my thoughts on this new motion controller 2 and the now new compatibility with the goggles Integra and the motion controller 2 with the Mavic 3, which is what I had. By the way, that was the Mavic 3 standard. It's not the Classic, it's not the Cine, and it's not the Pro, which is that newer one that was just announced recently. If you have any of those Mavic 3 class drones or the Mini 3 Pro, and you're on the fence with whether or not you should purchase the new motion controller 2, I'd say go for it. I mean, it's really cool to have this as an extra tool, but really for professional use, I can't recommend it. You are limited to a lot of the things are kind of locked out. There are a lot of video modes that aren't available. As far as I know, you can't zoom. I was trying to look for that. I could not find a way to zoom, and that's probably a safety thing. They don't want you zooming in while flying with a motion controller and kind of getting disoriented and crashing and hurting people with your drone things. So yeah, I can't recommend it for professional use, but for hobby use, for sightseeing, it is absolutely worth it. If you have the motion controller one like me, sell it. You could probably get 80 to 100 bucks for it. And the motion controller 2 without that coupon is pretty expensive. It's like over $200, which if you've got some money to burn, absolutely go spend it. But if maybe wait, check eBay. There's going to be some of these on the used market, I'm sure, from people who try it and then realize that they don't want to keep using it or something. That's pretty much it. Hopefully you enjoyed this and got some information out of it. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and like it. And if you want to see more stuff like this, other drone flights, I've got FPV, Mavic, Avata, you name it, I've probably got it. Subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more coming. Thanks for stopping by.